Hello everyone and welcome to another Pyro Gaming video. If you've been following the Bungie weekly updates that Bungie has been posting regarding upcoming sandbox changes, then you know that the sandbox will be shaken up a little bit next season. Nothing too crazy, mostly just nerfs to snipers, nerfs to grenade launchers, you know, the things that we've been using for the past 3 seasons pretty much religiously. But because of these changes, I wanted to make a video showing you 10 exotics that I think are going to be very good next season. So let's not waste any time, let's jump right in. So as I said, they are nerfing snipers by 20%. This includes Izanagi's Burden. Honed Edge reload animation is also going to be getting a little bit of a change. So that being said, with our top DPS weapon now off the board, or at least knocked down the board a little bit, I think weapons like Tractor Cannon, which gives you a 30% damage debuff when applied to an enemy, is going to become very valuable again like it was a few seasons ago. I would not be surprised if Tractor Cannon became a mainstay in pretty much every raid team's arsenal. And on the subject of weapons that make your teammates do more damage, you can't not mention Divinity. Divinity is a little bit more useful than Tractor Cannon in my opinion, since it uses special ammo as opposed to power ammo, and can be applied at a distance, whereas Tractor Cannon you need to be right up on them. However, because Divinity is locked behind the Garden of Salvation raid, I feel like more people are going to be using Tractor Cannon as a whole, just because it is more available. But if you do have Divinity, it's a really good exotic right now, and I can see it being even more valuable next season. So now let's talk about some weapons that I think could be potentially great for DPS, with Izanagi's taking a back seat. With snipers and grenade launchers getting their respective nerfs, I do think that Xenophage is going to be in the limelight a little bit more. Now, as it stands right now, Xenophage is a very good weapon. It's not the best weapon for boss damage simply because it shoots really slow, and therefore does not have a high DPS or damage per second. But when it comes to things like majors and ultras and stuff like that, Xenophage straight up claps. So, although Xenophage is not getting a buff next season with the nerfs to the other ones, it's going to be interesting to see if more people start using it in in-game activities. Another weapon that hits like an absolute truck that we could see make a comeback next season is the Legend of ACRIUS. Now, Legend of ACRIUS has pretty much never in the history of Destiny 2 been a bad weapon, especially if you have the catalyst for it. The catalyst makes it a brand new gun. It is pretty insane. It's probably the best catalyst in the game in terms of how much it changes the weapon's performance. But ACRIUS, like I said, hits like an absolute truck. So if Bungie is pushing a more close quarters combat style of gameplay this season, they want us to not have so much distance, and that's why they're nerfing things like snipers and grenade launchers, Legend of ACRIUS might be the one that we take into those Grandmaster Nightfalls to clap those champions really quickly. Another potential contender for burst DPS is going to be the Wardcliff Coil. I can see this one being very good against those aforementioned champions in things like the Grandmaster Nightfalls. I don't know if this is going to be a great one for boss DPS per se, but for majors and maybe some low-tier ultras, I can definitely see the Wardcliff Coil with Catalyst being very, very useful next season. I actually love this weapon. I'm excited to try it out. With the nerfs coming to sniper rifles, fusion rifles are going to have their stock go up a little bit, because fusion rifles are the close to medium range counterpart to a sniper that is meant for long range. So if you don't want to straight run a gun with a shotgun, and you don't want to have that nerf sniper for long range, fusion rifles are that middle ground. That being said, I think Merciless is probably one of the best fusion rifles in the game in terms of burst DPS. This thing doesn't hit very hard, but it does hit very quickly, and that hit does multiply over time, and you do get some pretty decent damage out of it. So I can see this being in a lot of people's special slot come next season. Let's take a little break from PvE and talk about some Crucible options before we finish with PvE. Auto rifles as a whole are getting a buff next season. Hard Light recently got a buff that changed its shooting animation and made it much less annoying. With both of these combined, next season I can definitely see Hard Light being a top contender in the Crucible. However, I do think that SUROS regime with spinning up is going to be the Crucible King come next season. I can see this thing being all over in Trials, just based on the fact that it's already, right now, a really good weapon. And when you add the buffs coming to next season to this weapon, it's going to be very, very good. I would not be surprised if SUROS Regime had one of the quickest time to kills in all of PvP. If you have the catalyst for this, it's definitely going to be good to have. I would go ahead and farm that out before the season ends to have it ready to go for trials come March 19th, because, mark my words, SUROS Regime will be a king. And back to PvE. Sleeper Simulant has never been a bad weapon, even after its nerf during Season of Opulence, where the ricochet rounds did less damage. Sleeper still hits like an absolute truck, man. The only downside about Sleeper is it does have a very slow charge time. However, if you're lucky enough to get the catalyst for Sleeper Simulant from the Spire Stars raid, then it completely changes the weapon. It cuts your charge time by about 30%, and it makes this really, really good. This is probably the second best catalyst in the game, in my opinion, second to Legend of ACRIUS. But yeah, I can see Sleeper making a comeback. It hits really hard, you get a decent amount of ammo with it, and if you have that catalyst, you have good charge time. I can see this being an actual contender for boss damage. And the last exotic on this list has to be none other than Anarchy. Now, Anarchy will get a 10% nerf with all the other grenade launchers in Season of the Worthy, but Anarchy is in a class of its own, for the simple fact that you can shoot a boss with Anarchy twice and then swap to a different weapon and do DPS, while Anarchy is doing damage passively in the background. So if you're running a fusion rifle, if you're running a shotgun, you can use those while Anarchy is still damaging that boss, and that's why I don't think that Anarchy is going to be very much affected by this 10% damage nerf that we're getting next season. I mean, it's really hard for you to say that a weapon that does passive damage over time without you actually having to do anything is ever going to be bad. Anarchy is one of my favorite weapons, and honestly probably one of the best weapons in the game, and one of the most unique weapons that I think Bungie's ever made for Destiny. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this list. Drop a comment in the box below. Let me know which exotics you are looking forward to trying out next season, and I will talk to you guys in the next video. If you enjoyed this one, click like. If you're new to the channel, click subscribe. If you're already subscribed, I fucking love you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and take care.